Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're here at Father Talks with a special guest, Mr. Barry Adkins. I'm your host, Mike D. We've got a very special story to tell. Barry lost his son back in 2015, and we want
2005.
to say again,
2005.
yep, 2005. So we're going to talk about Barry's journey. We're going to have a long discussion about Kevin, and we're going to honor Kevin today and all Kevin's glory. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Barry for a minute, let him tell his story, and we'll pick up on the end of that.
Well, we'll pick up the story when he graduated from high school, Michael. So he graduated from high school. Obviously, it was a struggle. And I remember at his high school graduation, he gave me a hug and whispered, "Thanks for not giving up on me, Dad." And after he got out of high school, he got a job working for an electrician, making good money, and he met my financial requirements, so I agreed to co-sign a loan. He wanted to buy a new truck. And for your folks in the audience that have teenagers, I made him give me 3 months worth of insurance payments and car payments before I would
Right.
co-sign that loan. And I'm hoping he'll find one from a private party. I'll go down to the credit union, sign papers, and be out there in about 5 minutes. He found one at a dealership. And if you have audience that works at a dealership, I apologize, but I have a healthy dislike for that process because I know they're going to try to sell me a bunch of stuff I don't want or need, right? So I go down to sit down in the financial guy's office at the dealership. The first thing that guy said to me is, "How about some life insurance?" I'm like, "Look, dude, I'm not here for life insurance. I don't need any life insurance. My wife will do just fine if something happens to me." And he said, "I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your son."
Mm.
I'm that guy. I'm that guy who rather indignantly told him that 18-year-old boys don't need life insurance because they don't die.
Right.
But I was wrong. They do die. He wouldn't live long enough to make a single payment on that truck. So he's graduated from high school. He's got money in the bank. He's 18 years old. Next thing he wants to do is move out because he's tired of the old man telling him what to do. Because I made him do all those terrible things like come in and wake me up when you get home.
Yeah.
Maybe every now and then take out the trash. He was tired of that. And he came into our living room one day, and we have this brown chair that sits in front of a big picture window and looks out over our backyard. He sat down in that brown chair and started talking about how he couldn't believe his life was finally beginning and he wanted to move out. And honestly, I did my best to discourage him because we really never had any problems with him.
Right.
His high school principal didn't even know who he was. And I considered that a good thing.
Right.
But I didn't have any luck talking him out of it. So a couple weeks later, his buddy Craig came over and they started the process of moving him out. He's 18 years old. They threw a bed, a TV, and a dresser in the back of his truck. That was his definition of moving out for the day. And he went back in the house, and in his bedroom, his clothing system was pile of clean, wrinkled clothes on the floor, pile of dirty clothes right next to it. He never folded any clothes. He throws a pair of the clean jeans in the dryer to de-wrinkle, came in the living room and told me something I've never forgotten. He said he wasn't going to take his toothbrush with him. He'd be back tomorrow morning and grab it. He put on his jeans. I walked out front with him like I normally do, gave him a hug, told him that I loved him and to be careful. Watched him drive away. It was the last time I saw him alive. That night, his friends decided to throw a little housewarming party for him. Started with a keg of beer, moved on to shots. He left a voicemail for his sister that night talking about how drunk he was and how much fun he was having. And he passed out a short time after he left that voicemail for his sister. His buddy Craig was worried about him, kept going back in to check on him. Around 4 a.m., calls started coming into 911. First calls for difficulty breathing. Next calls for not breathing. My son died alone in a hospital while I slept peacefully in my bed. Next morning is Sunday morning. My wife and I are sitting around drinking coffee, talking about what we're going to do or not do that day. At about 8:30 in the morning, the doorbell rings. And we're looking at each other because we weren't expecting company. And I open the door and I see two police officers and somebody in plain clothes at my front door. Should have been a big red flag, right?
Right.
It should have been, but I'm that guy. It didn't even occur to me that something bad had happened. I actually joked with them as they came in thinking this had to have something to do with a parked car or a dog. I had nothing. But they didn't laugh at any of my jokes. One of the officers and the person in plain clothes stayed by the front door. The other officer walked in and stood in front of that brown chair that Kevin had sat in 2 weeks before and talked about how his life was finally beginning.
Right.
He said there'd been an accident. Your son is dead. We asked who because we have a number of children. They said it was Kevin, and he handed me his driver's license. There's something pretty final about it when a police officer hands you your child's driver's license.
Right.
Because until that exact moment in time, you're holding out hope. You're holding out hope that this is all a big mistake. You have misspelled the last name. Get out of here. You need to be 3 streets over, or at least next door, right?
Right.
Any place but my place. But when they hand you your child's driver's license, you know he's gone and he's never coming back. One of us finally asked what the probable cause of death was, and the officer said that they thought it was alcohol poisoning. It was indeed alcohol poisoning. His blood alcohol content was 0.36%. It's the only statistic I ever mention, and the only reason I mention it is if you're ever in that situation, think about Kevin's buddy Craig. It's a night he'll never forget, I promise you.
Right.
I can only describe the days, weeks, and months after that as dark. There's just a lot of ugly stuff you have to do. You have to tell that story over and over again. And I was angry with God, and I told him so. I simply did not understand why he would take my son and let me live. And I tried to bargain with him, like, you're God, back up time.
Right.
Take me, let him live. And I don't think I'm unique in that thought process.
No, I mean, because as parents, we never want to outlive our children.
Yeah. So a couple days later, I had another life-changing event. This is a little difficult for me to describe, but I'm going to do my best. I was laying in bed. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning. I was wide awake. And the only way I can describe it is I felt like someone had walked in the room. You know, one of those things where you look around because you think someone just walked in the room.
Yeah.
And then there was a light I've never seen before and haven't seen since. And there was a message. And the message was that Kevin didn't suffer and something very good would come from this. And before I could think or say anything, it was gone. I didn't get to ask. I didn't get to cross-examine. Why God chose me for this message, I'm not the right guy, right? But God chooses the unimpressive to do his work, and here I am. So we go through the memorial, and we decide to have Kevin cremated, and I go pick up his ashes. So I go down to the funeral home, walk into the funeral home, and they've got nice pictures on the wall, and they're playing music in the background. They take me into an office, sit me down in a big, nice, comfortable chair, a big desk in front of me. Funeral director walks in, sets an urn down in front of me. An urn that holds all the remains of the kid that I burped, changed his diapers, coached baseball, basketball, soccer, football. I taught him to shoot a gun and swing a golf club. All the remains of him were sitting in an urn in front of me. There's one thing I knew at that point, and that was that I didn't want to be a victim.
Right.
Because the world doesn't need any more victims, Michael. We got plenty already.
Lord knows that's
the world
true.
needs people who take something bad and they make something very good come from it. And I thought about what I would hope somebody else would do if it happened to their kid. And for me, the answer was pretty easy. Just to get out and tell the story. Not for the money, because there is no money in the world that'll fix the hurt. It does not exist.
Yeah, because
the only thing that helps is to try to make something very good come from such a senseless tragedy. So now we got to decide what we're going to do with his ashes, right? I grew up in Kalispell, Montana. It's up in the northwest corner of the state.
Okay.
Kevin had grown up here in Gilbert, Arizona, and always talked about wanting to move there someday and buy a ranch. So we decided to take his ashes to Montana. Probably the normal thing to do is to put them in your car and drive there, right? But I decided to put them in my backpack and walk 1,400 miles from Gilbert, Arizona to Kalispell, Montana, and tell the story along the way. Because I guarantee you, you don't want to go through this.
Wow. I can tell you, having boys, having kids, listening to, the things that you did with your son, you did for your son, and to have that taken away from you, the question, to not question God would be insane. Why me?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Why me? Exactly.
I've got, my kids are, they're relatively good kids, never been in any major trouble, and like you said, the principal didn't know your son's name. That's
Yeah.
that's a good thing most of the time,
Yeah.
And to have that snatched away from you, I don't know. I don't know if I would have your resiliency. I had a daughter get into a really nasty accident and we thought we were going to lose her. I can't imagine what would have happened had we, you know, so my heart goes out to you to, for
There's
you to
that
be,
thing that happened, that,
yeah,
that there's something very good will come from this. That it didn't make everything okay,
right,
but it gave me a mission.
right.
I still don't know what it means. That's 20 years later. I'm still working on what it means.
Listen, I'm excited for you to see you on this side of it, sharing this message, and like I said, I watched the video and I'm thinking, how, where's the strength coming from? Because I cannot imagine, even being able to get out of the bed after such a loss, for you to walk 1,400 miles, you know, it speaks volumes, and clearly, there's a purpose for you yet,
There
you know,
is.
so, I mean,
I guess
I,
I'm not done just yet.
no, somebody's definitely got plans for you. So, okay, I had all these questions lined up, in my head, and now, just listening to that, like all of it seems so small now,
Yeah.
knowing, wow, a couple drinks, I've got an 18-year-old now, and I think this is why this story really stuck out to me because my son is 18.
Yeah.
He is off at college. He's home right now. He's home right now. He's going back to college. And I know that he goes out partying, goes out hanging out, and much the same, he checks in. I don't ask for a whole lot from him. Just, hey man, just let me know that you're home and you're okay.
Yeah.
That's it. We got the little, the phone tracker thing, we know where the kids are and that, but is it enough? All you can do is talk to them. All you can do is educate them, you know, and hope that they take the lessons. What about Kevin's friend Craig? I imagine that he is probably was in a terrible place too because he's the person who helped throw a party for his friend.
He
How's
did.
that? How's that relationship?
Well, my relationship with all of his friends is really good.
Good.
I talked to several of them. I was actually just at Craig's. His son just turned 1 year old, and actually, I just had a conversation with Craig here just a couple weeks ago because he had never said anything to me about it,
Right.
and I didn't want to, break open the scab.
Right.
And one of the things we didn't do was play any blame games, and that was the
Right. And
conversation I had to have. There's no, we're not going to play the blame game.
Right. And
And
I would imagine that it would be hard for parents, you know, feeling such a loss to not want to blame somebody.
it is, but you also have to keep in mind this was a decision, and that's
Right.
part of when I talk to students. That's the first thing I talk about. The two most important decisions you're ever going to make, apart from following Jesus Christ, are about
Right.
drugs and alcohol. It isn't even close. Everybody knows stories. You need to educate yourselves about the dangers of drug and alcohol abuse as if your life depends upon it,
Right.
because it does. It just does.
Exactly. It's like and so my son called me a couple weeks ago. He was at a college party, actually probably a couple months ago now. And we've always been big. Listen, man, if you've been drinking, don't get behind the wheel. We don't care
Yeah,
where you are. We will come get you.
yeah.
And he stayed out one night, stayed at a friend's house, but he didn't have a ride because the guy he drove with decided to drive home drunk. Well, he just
Ooh,
said, I'm not going with him.
yeah.
So we ended up having to go pick him up like two and a half hours away. You know, Obviously you're mad because you spend your Sunday, in the car stuck in traffic and whatnot. But at the same time, you're happy that, hey, you got the call and he's listening. You know, my other son, same thing, 4 o'clock in the morning, calls us from the bar, hey, I need a ride home. You know,
Yeah.
and you're all again, I tell the kids, I'm always gonna be mad because you woke me up, you
Right.
know, but I'm happy that you called.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what's what's something about Kevin that you want people to know? As a young man, as a son, what are things about him that you really want people to know about him?
He had a good heart. He actually befriended a boy named David when he was in third grade.
Okay.
David was in a wheelchair. Absolutely nothing wrong with David except his legs didn't work. But because he was in a wheelchair, it made it hard for him to make friends.
Right.
Kevin was that guy that made sure that David got out to the playground, back to class, and when they could talk David's mom into it, they'd drop him off over at her house. Third
Right.
grade boys, sometimes they have unusual rules. One of the rules those two boys had was that wheelchair never went in the house, Michael.
Yeah.
David was kind of a small kid. He could get up on his arms and kind of army crawl around and follow Kevin around.
Yeah.
But Kevin didn't have much in the way of patience. So when he wants to go from the bedroom to the living room, he would just go grab David by his arms and drag him through the house and drag him through the backyard.
But I still, but some people are like, oh, that's cruel. No, that's typical boy stuff.
Yeah, that's boy stuff. And then when he got older, he got his driver's license and his cell phone. He used to come home and tell me stories that honestly scared me to death.
Yeah.
Because he's that guy that stops on the freeway and gives a complete stranger a ride or helps them change a tire. Whatever they needed, he'd help them out with
Yeah. And in this day and age, you're as a parent, you're proud, but you're concerned because there's a lot of crazy out there,
it. There is.
unfortunately. So you're happy that your child is the kind of person that will reach out to help another person, but you want to be sure that they're being safe while they're doing it.
I always figured as long as his heart was in the right place, it would work out. That was kind of the way I looked at it. I never warned him about the dangers of it. I just thought, well, as long as his heart's in the right place, we'll be fine.
Okay. So tell me about the Good Men Project.
The Good Men Project.
Yeah.
I wrote a bunch of articles for them. I've written, well, I've told the story hundreds of times. I've written dozens of articles. I just want, my goal with all of that is to tell people about what happened
Okay.
and to look at things on the brighter side and think about how, when something bad happens, what can you do about it, right?
Right.
And bad stuff happens to everybody. The way you respond to adversity is going to define your life.
Right.
Notice I didn't say might, it will.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that, and I know. So we're picking up with this conversation later on in life after it's been years since it happened, but like your resiliency, like how you talk about this, I know it had to take time for you to get here, but like
Oh, yeah.
it for me, like I've got this knot right here at the thought. Like, what is he going through? You know,
It's ugly.
and
It
yeah,
it can destroy, and that's the sad part about it, Michael, is that it can destroy families. It can cause
right.
people to turn to drugs and alcohol to, soothe the pain. Um, Essentially, you have two choices, and really, for me, it comes back to that phrase, Michael, and why that phrase got dumped on me, I don't know, but um, I didn't know what something very good was. And it's kind of interesting in hindsight because, like, I would write a letter. I wrote a letter to the editor, and I reached out to the editor of a newspaper and asked him to write an article. He never wrote that article,
Hmm.
um, and I just kept searching. I just kept searching for what am I supposed to be doing. I mean, I started telling the story way too soon
Right.
in hindsight because I was a hot mess. But with time, I got better and better at it. Right. But it's grief is a difficult thing,
Right.
and I'll go ahead and give you my perspective on it. Um, for me, I wanted to feel the way I did before he died,
Mm.
and that's simply not possible.
Right.
The old you dies with your child.
Right.
There's a new you there, and how you define that new you is up to you. But you will never feel that way again. And it takes time to come to grips with that. Because you just want to feel, I want to feel the way I did before he died.
Right.
And it's not possible. He's gone.
So,
You'll never feel that way again.
so for you and your family, what's been the thing that's kind of held you guys together? Through all this.
Not playing the blame game and trying to make something very good come from this senseless tragedy. That's really uh, been the focus.
Right. That's outstanding. I just, again, um, like I said, I had all these questions and things lined up, and hearing this story, like the questions now are like they're irrelevant, because seriously, it's such an amazing story because how I know people who've lost friends and family and everything, and to lose a child, is something I cannot fathom, especially, at 18 years old, you know,
Yeah.
and
And
listening to you talk about, it stood out to me right away, you saying that my son died alone. That is my greatest fear,
yeah.
to have something happen to one of my children and not be able to be there.
Well, and the story's not over with yet.
Right.
So I, I've told this story hundreds of times. I don't know the exact number of people in the hundreds of thousands of people. I wrote a book, which I did not want to write. That was another thing. I kept a journal on the walk. And I'm lucky to have people who call me out. And I was going to print that blog out and send it to a friend. And I called him up and said, "Hey, I'm going to print this out and send it to you." And he goes, "No, you're not. I don't want it." And I said, "Why
Right.
not?" He said, "Because you're going to write a book, or I'm going to know the reason why." And I said, "I'm not writing a book." 2 years later, I wrote a book. And since then, um, one of the more common questions that really bugs me is people say, "What's next for you?" And it's like, well, can I just kind of keep doing what I'm doing?
Right.
But it occurred to me that maybe what's next for me isn't even about me. So we're working on it. We have not released it yet, but it's
Okay.
something called the Million-Mile Challenge.
Okay.
I walked to Montana to raise awareness and to honor my son.
Okay.
There's no reason why we can't allow everybody that's lost a child or a loved one or even someone that's still addicted. They can't walk for that person. They will
Right.
be they'll be able to set up how far they're going to walk, how long it's going to take them. Hopefully, on the website, they'll be able to load a picture and a description of why they do it. And together, I think we can do 1,000,000 miles.
Oh, listen, you let me know when that is ready. I will be happy to promote that. Send it to anybody, anybody who will listen.
Yeah.
I think that is phenomenal, and I think you know what, it gives people somebody else
Yeah.
who who's sharing, who's in their situation, you know, an
Yeah.
opportunity to talk.
Not about me. It's about these stories are so common.
Right.
Everybody has a story.
Uh,
Everybody has a story about somebody they know.
and I just cannot imagine, you know, like not enough people have somebody else to lean on.
Yeah.
And I think, you know what, this would be a great opportunity for people to maybe to get together and, you know
Yeah.
what, share their experience, their grief, you know,
Yeah.
their, you know, whatever it is, you know, hey, I've come out of this, you know, on the other end. I'm not great, but I'm better than I was.
Yeah.
You know, this is, and you know, I'm not the generally the emotional guy. You know, I don't get
Me
a lot.
neither.
Yeah, you know, but like this is something that has really touched me in a way because, you know, and I was just talking to a psychologist on another episode earlier, you know, talking about men being able to express their emotions and whatnot. And
We're not good at that.
no, not at all. But I am feeling some kind of way right now of, you know,
Good.
listening to the story, and you know, I'm not for not for the tragedy, but for what's come from it. You know, I am so excited to share this with other people now because I know there's somebody else, you know, going through this very same thing, you know,
Yeah.
and they need an outlet, you know, and hearing this may be the thing that, you know, that gets them off the couch, gets them out of the bed and said, you know what is my purpose going to be? You know,
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
I need to, you know, I need to do something, you know, and
And it's interesting, Michael. I'll tell you that when I decided to do the walk, there was a lot of people that tried to talk me out of it.
right,
Well-meaning people, right? Because I get it. They were afraid I was going to fail.
right,
I was afraid I was going to fail. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But one guy said something to me that kind of applies to the Million Mile Challenge too. He said, "How do you think you'd feel about it in 10 years if you don't do it?"
oh, ouch,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that, um, even this new challenge, this Million Mile Challenge, it's scary for me, right? Because there's a
right,
lot of stuff to figure out, things that are going to have to happen, and we'll figure it out. But
right.
I can't stop now.
No, no, but that's the thing is that, you know, you're turning tragedy into, well, it'll never be positive, but you're making something positive out of a tragedy.
Making something very good come from
Yeah,
this, and that's the phrase that has hung with me, Michael,
right.
for 20
I love
years.
it. I absolutely love that. That's a t-shirt waiting to happen. You know.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So when you speak to parents, you know, students, what's the hardest truth that you share with people, or you have to share with people?
That it can happen to them. So the three things that I ask them to take away from it, we've talked about decision making already, right? And adversity. That's the second thing. But the third one is about this thing called forgiveness. It was easy for me to forgive the guys at the party because this was Kevin's choice, right?
Right.
And it's easy for me to forgive my kid because that's what we do as parents. But there was one person that was really, really, really hard to forgive, and that was me.
Right.
It took 1,400 miles and 5 pairs of shoes, but I have found a way to forgive myself. I heard a pastor describe it best once. He said that anger and vengeance are going to lead to just one thing: destruction. Forgiveness is going to lead to healing. And sometimes the most important person you need to forgive is yourself.
Right.
We all make mistakes. It's the way you handle it that matters.
Now, hearing that, why do you feel like you needed to forgive yourself?
Because I'm his parent. I was
Right.
his dad.
There you go.
The number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The top 10 jobs you have is to keep them alive, right?
Right.
And I didn't get that done.
Right.
That's every parent, I think, would agree that that's your number one job. Everything else pales in comparison to that.
Right. Now, did that change you as a parent? Did it make you more? Did it make you less likely to want your kids to leave the house, or did you check on them more?
You, I very much worry about them more. It changes you as a man
Right.
in ways that you can't even imagine. If somebody would have told me 25 years ago, God would have tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, this is what I got planned for you." You know what I'd have said? Pick somebody else.
Right.
I'm not the right guy for this job. I don't want to have anything to do with this. You go do it. It'll be great. Don't. I'm not the right guy. But
Right.
as
But God
I've
doesn't make
discovered,
mistakes.
He doesn't choose the qualified. He qualifies the chosen.
Oh, very. Just hearing that, I imagine there's a lot of parents out there that probably still blame themselves, for the loss of their child. Maybe I shouldn't have sent them, shouldn't have let them go. I didn't talk to them enough. And
Yeah.
I don't feel that we can ever talk to our kids enough, no matter what you do. We can't talk to them enough. We cannot, advise them enough. We can never tell them that we love them enough, you know, and hearing you say that, what, something bad can happen, despite everything that you've done, despite everything that you've talked to them about, something bad still could happen. And I'm going to be honest with you, excuse my language, but that scares the absolute shit out of me
Yeah.
because it's out of my hands once he leaves the house or once they leave
Yeah.
the house. You know, all the tragedies that, we see in the world today, you know, they're out of our control for the most part.
Yes, they are.
And again, it scares me to death. My kids are like, Dad, this is where I'm going to be at. All right, man, well, just check in with me in an hour or two.
Well,
Um,
whatever needs to be said, um, my advice for you is don't wait until it's too late.
right, right, and that's the other thing about this. You know, you've got a good relationship with your son. You know, and he was coming back the next day for his toothbrush
Yeah.
and didn't get the opportunity.
That's a crazy part of it that uh, it's not poetry. That's what happened.
Yeah,
I remember thinking, well, why don't you just take it now?
yeah, because
Like
that was his
what?
excuse because he wanted to see you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, he's excited about being in his own place because my son's at college and this kid calls all the time. I'm like, bro, we just talked to you like 15 minutes ago. Hey, I just wanted to see what you guys were doing.
Yeah.
You know, but so that was his way of being able to come back to the house. Toothbrush, you can put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
man, like again, I've repeated this a million times, and this is just I don't even know how to express what I'm feeling about this situation. And it's not my situation. Just as a father, knowing that here it is, a man's done everything he can by his kids. He's advised them. He's been there, and something happens that negates everything that he's done. Or everything that he's tried to do,
Yeah.
and it's completely out of his control.
Yeah. Nobody ever believes it's going to happen to them,
Right. And
including me. Right. I mean,
right.
that was me. That's why nobody ever believes it's going to happen to you until it does.
So the book.
Yeah.
What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is Kevin's Last Walk,
Okay.
Father's Final Journey with His Son. Um, it was more work writing the book than walking to Montana. It is available on Amazon. I better not forget to
Okay.
say that. It's available on Amazon, but it uses it, walking to Montana. I knew what I was going to do every day, Michael.
Right.
Right? I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk 14 miles, and that's going to be that, and go speak here. And it was all very linear. But writing a book uses different parts of your brain,
Right.
and I'm an engineer by trade, so
Okay.
there's parts of that that aren't really very accessible. But Stephen King wrote a book about writing. I read a lot of documentaries and stories, people wrote autobiographies, those kinds of things. But in that book, he said, when you write a book, it uses two parts of your brain. There's the creative part, and then there's the logical part. And the way he described it, and it's basically what I did, is when you're just writing, get someplace where it's quiet, where you're not going to be distracted, and then you just type a stream of consciousness. Whatever
Right.
you're thinking about,
Mhm.
whatever, wherever it's going to go, doesn't matter. Don't worry about how you're going to use it. Just write it down. Then later, you use the logical part of your brain to decide, is it even going in the book? Where would it go in the book? Does it make sense to put it here or there? That's the logical part, but two
Right.
different parts of your brain.
So, all right, let's get. I'm gonna. I wrote, again, like I said, I had all these questions, and all of them seem so irrelevant now to hearing all this. But I did want to touch on, if Kevin's story could save just one life, what would you want that person to hear right now?
And it can happen to them. It 100% can happen to them. I'll tell you one story. There's a lot of stories, Michael, but I'll tell you one in particular.
Okay, we'll
I
take all.
I spoke at a school up in Scottsdale, Arizona. Got a call. I got an email a couple weeks later that there had been a party. One of the students that was there saw someone passed out. He wanted to call 911. The other students did not want him to call 911. So he put the student that was passed out in his car, drove him to an urgent care facility, who called 911, and they air evac'd him out and saved his life.
Wow. So simple. Why do you think kids are, they're just more afraid that they're going to get in trouble? It's the fear of getting in trouble versus doing the right thing. We're
Exactly.
we're underage, you know, and I don't think maybe we don't talk to them enough to say, hey, we don't want you drinking, but we understand that it's going to happen. Do it safely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if you see
more
something that looks bad, step up. Think about
step.
Kevin's buddy Craig.
Yeah,
That's what I tell everybody, because it's a night he'll never forget, I promise you. He
you
told me
see,
he didn't realize that you could actually die from it. He thought, well, as long as they throw up, they're
yeah,
okay, right? But
yeah,
that's just not true.
right, and I imagine a lot of kids probably think that, and so I coach football. I've got a lot of kids that from my from the years when I coached type ball and that, they're graduating from high school, they're all going off to college now, and this is a story that I really like. I would like to maybe have you on again at some point, so the boys can hear from you personally.
Bring me out if you can
Yeah,
do it. If we can get it
yeah,
figured out. I
yeah,
don't. That's the other thing, is that I'm not in this to make money. Uh,
right,
if I have to fly, obviously there's travel costs, but that's it.
right,
I don't. In the state of Arizona, I've done it a lot, and I don't charge anybody for my time, because
yeah,
it feels a little disingenuous to do that for me.
right,
Maybe that'll change someday, but right now I
right.
just don't see it as the right thing to do.
Right. And hey, listen, I understand that. I appreciate that. You know, I just think that hearing it, hearing this story, and hearing what you have to say is going to be different for a lot of these young men. And you, girls as well. Girls,
Yeah.
this affects them equally as much. But hearing this from somebody who's gone through this tragedy, hearing that firsthand versus hearing your coach, your mom and dad, constantly, you know,
Yeah.
essentially harping on you about it, you know, hearing it from a parent who's experienced this, I think would affect them differently. It hits differently, because it could happen. My
Yeah.
parents aren't just saying it. Coach isn't just, saying, hey, be careful, because that's his job. No,
Yeah.
this is a tragedy that could happen, you know, and I guarantee that most of those boys, most of those girls don't think about alcohol poisoning. I guarantee it. When we finish this conversation today, I'm going to ask my 18-year-old, hey, do you know you can get alcohol poisoning? Guarantee he's never thought about it.
Yeah.
You know, so I just I've I'm taking all this information in and I'm looking at things from a slightly different perspective now
That's my goal.
than
That's
I
my
did
goal.
before we started this conversation. And now even more so, because I talk to my kids regularly, you know, I don't feel like now that I'm talking to them enough, that it could ever be enough.
Yeah.
So thank you for the education, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing Kevin's story. You know, how's your family doing with all this? I know it's been years, but how are you guys doing? With you, doing interviews and talking to people about it. How did your family feel about it?
They're good with it. And again, we did not play the blame game.
Right,
And I think that was, for me, that's such an important part of it because it's not going to bring him back.
right,
But I'm just dad, right? Yeah, whatever, dad. You do it. It's difficult. I think most of them now, it's taken years. Most of them didn't want to come and hear the story.
right.
The one person that did, Michael, I'm a happily married man, is my wife, Bev. She was very helpful in helping me understand when you lose an audience. She
Right.
was honest with me about, she would sit in the back, and you can sit in the back and you can tell when you lose an audience. And she would say, no, you lost him with that. Either
Yeah.
fix it or get rid of it. Seriously. But there is one funny, I got to leave you on a lighter note. So the
Okay.
brown chair. Um, so I'm always looking for ways to change it. And one of the things I had read was that you should try to tie parts of the story together.
Okay.
And so I brought up the brown chair, which that did really happen. And so I used it one day, and my wife Bev was off on the side. It was at a high school. There's probably 1,000 kids there. And I walked over and sat down next to her, and I whispered, "What did you think about the brown chair?" And she said, "It's gold. It's not brown."
Hey, at least you didn't correct you in front of everybody.
I know. I've never forgotten that. It was so
Oh
funny.
my
I
goodness.
just busted up. I was laughing so hard.
It's gold, not brown.
It's still going to
Listen,
be brown.
men, we only know the basic colors anyway.
It's
When I
correct.
get asked, hey, do these colors go together? I'm like,
I don't know.
sure. If
You think they do? I think they do.
yeah, I agree with you. They both look great together.
Yeah.
So, Barry, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I hope to listen. I'd love to have you on again.
Yeah.
I believe that this is a story that no matter even 20 years from now, it's still going to be relevant because we're still
Yeah.
going to be raising kids. There's still going to be young men and women going off on their own. Some of them don't have the kind of guidance, that even your boy had, and
Yeah.
tragedy happens.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how much more, how many more kids rather need guidance or need somebody to talk to them, you know. So I would love to have you on again. We'll stay in touch. I will share
Okay.
this story. Um, if there's anything that anything additional that you want to share with the audience, please do, and I will make sure that it gets out there.
Bring me.
Absolutely.
That's my thing is I'll do it if I can physically make it happen. I will. On the walk there was numerous things were set up by people stopping beside the road and saying, "Hey, can you come and speak at our school?" And I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah, we'll make it
Okay.
happen. We'll
Okay.
figure out a way to make it happen."
Well, thank you so much for spending time
Yeah.
with us today. My heart goes out to you and your family. I thank you for sharing the story with us. You know, you you're not done yet though. You still got work to
No,
do. So,
got work to do.
yeah, I